Hello, folks. I either have a cold or an allergy, and I've been going on Google the last 2 or 3 days, Googling how do you tell if it's a cold and how do you tell if it's an allergy, and still haven't figured it out. But if my voice sounds weird, that's why. Spent some time sitting on the couch reading Shobo Genzo this morning, because that's what I do for fun. It's not really true. Usually I watch Ancient Aliens, but today I was watching Shobo Genzo, or reading Shobo Genzo. And it's an interesting corollary to some of the stuff I've put up on this channel recently about Yogacara Buddhism. Because Yogacara Buddhism is sometimes called consciousness-only Buddhism, Vijnanavada, or mind-only Buddhism, Yuishin Buddhism. And Dogen, I'd kind of been trying to trace Dogen's involvement in Yogacara, because he does occasionally use phrases that come from Yogacara sources, so obviously he was familiar with that teaching, but he doesn't really teach a mind-only sort of Buddhism. And I just happened upon this chapter that addresses that. And it's called Isangai Yuishin, which means the triple world is only the mind. And see how I wrote in my notes that it's in volume 7 of the Japanese version. For whatever that's worth. If you have Nishijima Roshi, Gudo Roshi, somebody just told me, my friend Rob told me, that it's rude to use somebody's family name after they've died. I never heard that custom, but he's probably right, and it probably only applies to Buddhist teachers, masters, whatever. I don't know. I'll probably never get over the habit of calling him Nishijima Roshi, because that's what we always called him. But anyway, Gudo Roshi put out a 12-volume set of the Shobo Genzo in contemporary Japanese. But it's not just contemporary Japanese. It has on a kind of has a little kind of weird system that's a little hard to figure out sometimes. But it's got the original Japanese version, and then he's got his own contemporary Japanese version. He's got tons of footnotes, but it's all in Japanese, and it's 12 volumes, and it's a monster. But I've got it over there on the shelf, and I use it a lot to reference when I'm writing a book like Don't Be a Jerk, or what was the other one called? It Came from Beyond Zen, or even when I was writing Sit Down and Shut Up a long time ago. Sangai Yuishin, Triple World is Only the Mind, sounds very Yogacara-ish, and here's what Dogen says at the outset of the chapter. Great Master Shakyamuni says, that's the Buddha, the OG Buddha, the triple world is only one mind. There is nothing outside of the mind. The mind, Buddha, and living beings, the three are without distinction. And that's from the Garland Sutra. I'd have to go look it up, but I'm assuming from the name of it that it's a Mahayana Sutra. And the Mahayana Sutras are less historically reliable than the so-called Hinayana Sutras, or the Tripitaka, the 3 volumes or 3 baskets of teachings that are the Pali Sutras, which are considered to be closer to the historical Buddha. Although there are people who will argue that some of the Mahayana Sutras probably contain things that the historical Buddha said that aren't in the Pali canon. That's a little dubious, but it's possible. Anyway, suffice it to say, maybe our man Shakyamuni didn't quite say this in exactly those words, but this is the tradition as it's handed down to us. So that Shakyamuni says, the triple world is only one mind. There is nothing else outside the mind. The mind, Buddha, and living beings, the three are without distinction. What does Dogen have to say about this? Dogen says right at the outset of this chapter, it's like a couple of sentences in, he says, the triple world is the whole world. We do not say that the triple world is the same thing as mind. The reason is that however brilliant in all aspects the triple world is, it is still the triple world. Even if we misunderstand that it might be beyond the triple world, that is completely impossible. Inside, outside, and middle, beginning, middle, and end, are all the triple world. The triple world is as the triple world is seen, and a view of something other than the triple world is a mistaken view of the triple world. Well, what's the triple world? We can go down here and look at these nice footnotes that Nishijima Roshi wrote, probably with Mike Cross, and it says, Sangai, triple world, represents the Sanskrit Trayo Jesus, I can't even read that. Anyway, represents some Sanskrit word with a lot of consonants. The three worlds are: 1, the world of desire or volition, and in parentheses he's wrote thinking. 2, the world of matter or form, feeling, in parentheses. And the world of non-matter or the formless, action. So thinking, feeling, and action, or desire, volition, that's number 1, form, number 2, and formless. Basically, it's a way of trying to say everything in the world and not limiting it to just the material world. So when we say the whole world in English, often we just mean the material aspects of the world. We don't necessarily mean thinking or action as part of the world. But when the Buddhists say Sangai, triple world, they mean everything, not just the world of matter, but the world of volition and thinking and anything that goes on inside the mind, and the world of action and formlessness as well. So everything is the mind, he says, but then he says it's not the same as mind. So this is Dogen's way of trying to kind of bring that Yogacara philosophy, which he evidently did appreciate and find value in, into something that he felt was more realistic, which is saying, yeah, the triple world is mind only, but the triple world is the world. So the world is the world, and the world is the mind. That's some crazy stuff right there. But what I get out of that is that all that Yogacara stuff of trying to define things is useful in its own area. But when we actually are doing our thing, watching our Flintstones DVDs, or sitting on the couch drinking, Emergency, like I was doing, there is this. And this is beyond any sort of definition that we can give it. So, yeah, one way of putting it is saying the triple world is mind alone, but there's also a world here that we have to deal with, whether it is defined as mind alone or whether it's not defined that way. Here's another quote from this. He also has Shakyamuni saying, "Now this triple world, all is my possession, and living beings in it, all are my children." I remember writing about this for Sit Down and Shut Up because I thought it sounded a little Christian-y. If you say that all the world is my children, that sounds a little bit like, something Jesus might say. But he doesn't mean exactly that. This is what Dogen says after that. "Because this triple world here and now is the Tathagata's," that's Buddha's, "own possession, the whole universe is the triple world. Because the triple world is the whole universe here and now, is past and present and future, the reality of past, present, and future does not obstruct the here and now. The reality of the here and now blocks off past, present, and future." I think what he's trying to get at there is what I just said. The reality of here and now blocks off past, present, and future. Past, present, and future are concepts, we use them and they're useful, and we can't say that there is no past and there is no future, because in some sense there is. But these are just ideas. Here is the present moment. Here is what we're dealing with. Here's another little bit in this chapter that I highlighted because I thought it was interesting. "The mind itself is skin, flesh, bones, and marrow." That's a reference to an old story about Bodhidharma talking to his disciples, and he says, you've got my skin, you've got my flesh, you've got my bones, you've got my marrow, and it's a whole other story for another day. It just means everything, the whole shebang. So, the mind itself is skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. The mind itself is the picking up of a flower and a face breaking into a smile. That's a reference to when the Buddha supposedly gave the first Dharma transmission to Mahakashapa. He picked up a flower and smiled, and then Mahakashapa smiled back. Sometimes they say he winked back. And they were establishing that they had Dharma transmission, that they had the same sort of understanding. There is conscious mind and there is unconscious mind. Well, that kind of brings in the whole Yogacara thing, doesn't it? There is mind in which the body is present. There is mind in which no body is present. There is mind before the moment of the body, and there is mind after the moment of the body. That's some heady stuff, but I think he's saying that mind is something bigger than our form experience, and that we acknowledge that without simultaneously making an object of it. That's kind of the Zen way, is to not have an object external to ourselves that we worship, including mind, but we have an acknowledgement that mind, or maybe if you're that way you might say God, is also bigger than this, but that this is also a manifestation of God or mind or whatever word you choose. And finally, one of the quotes that I outlined here, that I put a little ring around because I liked it, is, even if we have the state of understanding the triple world is mind alone, that's in quotes, we should also master not understanding the triple world is mind alone. And that, I think, is maybe a good takeaway, sort of a final takeaway, especially in a short video like this, for what this chapter is about. The understanding that triple world is mind alone is one thing, but also mastering not understanding that is another thing. And this sort of reminds me of something that happened when I first started doing Zen, and I've told this story before, so bear with me, long-time listeners. I had this girlfriend at the time who was a born-again Christian, and she'd had a conversation with Tim, my first Zen teacher, which I was not privy to, in which Tim told her, she'd said something about enlightenment, and Tim told her something like, oh, Brad will never be enlightened. And then she reported this back to me with great glee, and, saying, yeah, Brad, he says, you will never be enlightened. And I really kind of took that hard, because I just started studying with the guy, and I really was kind of interested in this whole enlightenment business. So to hear, from a third party that my teacher had said Brad will never get enlightened was kind of devastating. But I was already committed to the Zen practice, and I was finding a lot of value to it, even by that point, by that very early point. So I decided to continue, and I decided that my practice was going to be, rather than trying to find enlightenment, I was going to practice trying to understand exactly what the lack of enlightenment was. And if I could understand that, then that would be an accomplishment right there. And so I continued that way, and actually it was a kind of a benefit to my practice, because I got rid of a lot of these ideas of having, some kind of a special experience in the future. Years and years later, I finally brought this up to Tim, because I think at the time I would have been too shy to bring it up to Tim, because it would have been like, I don't want him to confirm that, then I'll feel even worse. But I don't know what it was. Years and years later, I brought that conversation up to him, and he said he didn't remember that conversation. He didn't remember saying that, but he did remember that this girlfriend of mine had some pretty bizarre ideas about what enlightenment was, and that if he had said that, he probably meant just that there's no such thing as that sort of enlightenment that she was talking about. She didn't mean that I was somehow incapable of achieving it. So there you go. That's a little talk about Mind Here and Now as Buddha. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you like it. If you enjoy this stuff, you know the drill. Donate to me via PayPal and Patreon. That's how I make my living. That's how I go to Trader Joe's and buy bananas. It's with your donations. Think about that. I am buying bananas with your donations. Pretty impressive, right? It's pretty impressive that you can see me. I was just reading this weird book by John Keel called the Operation Trojan Horse, and he's a UFO researcher, and you guys know I have a side interest in that. But he's bringing up the strangeness of the fact that you can hear somebody's voice on the radio and that you can see somebody's face on television. And he kind of goes into a slight, a little description of the technology behind that, which I'd never thought of. And I thought, geez, that is weird. When you think you're living in a world where you can see me, you can see, if you met me in person, I probably look pretty much like what I look like on your YouTube screens. And that's an amazing, amazing, weird accomplishment that we humans have come up with. And I think Keel's point was, who knows what a civilization millions of years advanced of ours could come up with. Maybe they could just make a person appear right in front of you if they wanted to, and it would be exactly as if the person had appeared in front of you. I think that was his point, which, probably true. If you give technology enough of a head start, maybe we could get there. But just the fact we don't even have to worry about that, the fact that here and now you can see me on your YouTube screen, just sit and be amazed by that for a second, and let that sink in, because I think that's really, really amazing. Anyway, there you go. That's my little rant for the day. Yuishin, no, Sangai Yuishin. Triple World is Mind Alone. Donate to me so I can buy bananas. See you later. Have a nice day. Merry Christmas. I'll probably talk to you before Christmas. But if I don't, Merry Christmas. See you later. Bye.